Thank you so much. It's a great pleasure to be back here with you today. It's a real honor. I was here last year, and Krakow has been home to my family, the Tarnowskis, for about 700 years. So it's a real honor to be back here with you today to talk about something that I'm really passionate about, that's very much my life's work, and that's about integrated cooperation. And what I want to share today is a belief that it's the way we cooperate that is going to be the lifeblood of the fourth industrial revolution. Here we are. There we are. So, let's start with an invitation to you all, to what I call the collective potential movement. This is different to the human potential movement that began in the 1960s, that was focused more about the individual than the collective, more about the me than the we. The collective potential movement is all around the way we cooperate. It's all around our mindset. It's around going from a scarcity mindset to an abundance mindset. It's about the ecosystem. Because we're at a unique point in history. We're at what I call the digital enlightenment. This time that we're all living through, where technology is changing the way we live, changing the way we work, and changing the way we interact. And you're all participants. This Enlightenment period is unique in history. Unlike previous Enlightenment periods, which happened in geographically hyperlocated places, the digital Enlightenment is happening all across the world because of the internet and because of the way we're now enabled to cooperate. And it's when we operate in a collective that we really exponentially multiply our capabilities. We know that the best breakthroughs in technology and science happen at the intersection of disciplines. And that's what we're going to focus on today. So I run a company called BraveNew, and we power digital communities of purpose. We basically help organizations and collaboratives share knowledge, share data, share innovations more effectively. We help them scale best practices. As William Gibson said, the future is already here. It's just not evenly distributed. I like to say, the solutions to most problems already exist. They're just not evenly distributed. And there's a huge opportunity in us identifying solutions and scaling them. So what do I mean by integrated cooperation? Really, it's about going from siloed approach to an ecosystem approach. And I think this is the real opportunity of the fourth industrial revolution. I like to say, where there is change, there is opportunity. And I think it's by our approach to ecosystems that gives organizations the opportunity of the fourth industrial revolution. I'm beginning to launch an experimental lab and a social movement with friends all around integrated cooperation to try to tackle some of the world's most challenging problems, the grand challenges of our time, of which we have many. Our world is made up of these complex systems that are growing in complexity. You can think about any challenge that faces humanity, from rising extremism, climate change, social inequality, nuclear proliferation. These are complex systems in their own right. It's impossible for any individual to understand the interdependence and interconnected nature of any one of these issues. And that's why we need to get much better at how we create a hive mind, how we collaborate effectively. Think of the world's issues like a bowl of spaghetti. If you think about that bowl of spaghetti, it's impossible for you to know when you move one piece of spaghetti how it will influence all the other pieces in the bowl. That's a bit like our world's issues today. We just don't know what's going to happen with the presidency of the United States and what the implications will be for Europe. We don't know what the implications are going to be of North Korea. We're now in a really complex world that is impossible to predict. And that's why we need to cooperate. At the bottom line, I think it's about going from competition to cooperation. And really, this is where we have an opportunity to do what I call a jujitsu move on capitalism, to use the market forces that are there on capitalism to actually incentivize the change within the system. So I invite you to reimagine our world. I invite you to surrender any potentially limiting beliefs you might have around how change can happen. I ask, do you want to see a different world? Do you want to see a world where we can go from competition to cooperation? I want to share with you what is my greatest passion in this area. Let's start with a great quote from Steve Jobs. He said, "Everything around you that you call life was made up by people that were no smarter than you. You can change it. You can influence it." So where do we begin? Let's start with what I call the great intersection. The intersection between science, technology, and our humanity. And what I mean by our humanity is our culture, our arts, our values. And what I want to ask is, are we getting that balance right? Undoubtedly, we can see there's been exponential developments happening in the field of science and the field of technology that is changing our relationships. It's changing the way we work, the way we live, the way we interact. But the question is, what about our humanity? How is that keeping up? What about our consciousness? What about our cultures? What about our emotional awareness? What I call the technologies of the heart. We've had dystopian writers warn us of what developments in science and technology without our humanity will create. And that's this ugly mashup of ELYSIUM, Brave New World, and 1984. That we actually do have the choices. It's really important that we think about who is being served here. What are the implications of these advances? And we can learn from nature. We can learn from ecosystems in nature, such as ants' nests, beehives, these integrated ecosystems that are in balance. We can learn from indigenous communities and how they live. In many ways, we can go back to the future. The more I see different cultures emerge, the more I realize that we're going back to this time where we lived in community, where we can see the values of indigenous communities coming through. You know, examples like how is technology helping us interact? You know, now we can connect through social networks and communication channels to virtually anyone, yet loneliness is on the rise. Just in my lifetime, 3 times more of the population don't talk to each other around issues they face. The question is, in service of what? I believe the 4th Industrial Revolution needs our heads as much as our hearts. Our future really does depend on it. So think about this. Are our approaches to the grand challenges that face us, are we approaching it from a silo or from a collective? In so many ways, we do need to go back to the future. Einstein said, "No problem can be solved with the same level of consciousness that created it." I believe our ability to cooperate at scale is directly linked to our approach and our mindset. Directly linked to, do we have a scarcity mindset or an abundant mindset? In many ways, directly linked to our consciousness. At the core of it, I really believe we need to rewire our brains. We need to reflect on the role our egos are playing in what we do. and surrender those egos in the interest of the collective if we're going to have a hope of addressing the issues of our time. I like to say we're egoholics, and we really need to go from an ecosystem to an ecosystem in our approach. So Buckminster Fuller was a great innovator, and he said, "You never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete." It's a really interesting challenge for us. And I think talking of existing realities, this year was my 9th year in Davos and 7th year as part of the World Economic Forum's Young Global Leaders community, which I love and have learned a huge amount from. But I'd say, even though there are great things that come out of Davos, on the whole, I would say it's tweaking at the world's issues rather than fundamentally redesigning what I see as a broken global system. So I challenge you today, what would happen if you started with a blank page to redesign our world? How would your companies look different in this integrated cooperative world? So what do I see as the big changes that technology is bringing about, that the fourth industrial revolution is bringing about? Right now, I think the majority of the world's infrastructure and systems are centralized. And this is what I believe is fundamentally changing. I think we're going from a centralized world to largely a decentralized world and distributed world. And we can see that affecting every aspect of our society, our nation states, our currencies, our knowledge networks, our organizations, democracy itself. And what technology will be behind this? Blockchain is one of them. Blockchain is one of the technologies that is enabling this. Blockchain enables us to have trust and identity online. Don Tapscott and his son Alex wrote this fantastic book I recommend, The Blockchain Revolution. In it, he talks about blockchain as the trust protocol, that technology that the internet's been missing, but now we can know who you are and the exchange of your digital interactions in this connected database. Blockchain facilitates trust, identity, and reputation in a digitally distributed world. This gives rise to new possibilities for integrated cooperation. In many ways, blockchain helps us humanize the digital world. And I think this is an example of what Buckminster Fuller meant by making the existing system obsolete. So blockchain and ecosystem convergences are enabling new forms of organizations. And one form of organization I'm really excited about are what's called DAOs, decentralized autonomous organizations. DAOs are stateless, voluntary, digitally validated, decentralized networks. And they have the possibility to really disrupt every aspect of our society. I think DAOs will manage resources and networks more efficiently. They will help tackle the inefficiencies of the centralized model, which has the tendency to be bureaucratic, inefficient, often corrupt, and they will directly tackle those power inefficiencies. I think there will be a DAO around protecting the Amazon through common good assets. There will be a DAO around water security. There will be a DAO to provide universal basic income. There will be a DAO for education, a DAO for healthcare, and a DAO for our democracies themselves, to create these voluntary systems. They really help us create a more equitable world, an integrated ecosystem. So this is your invitation to participate in the purpose economy, to intersect your passion, your purpose, and your potential. And it's through this interdisciplinary work that we can really multiply our potential and incentivize collective outcomes over individual outcomes. I think this is all about unleashing our collective potential to solve our grand challenges. Because individually, I believe we are limited, but together, we are limitless. So thank you so much.